live on the set. Welcome to the Bayou, a place where legends are born and many have witnessed them. From Coach Dale to Shaq, Joe and Jaden to Eddie Kennison. You come to Death Valley or P-Mac, expect that voodoo. Top speed like it's 4-2, where nobody's catching Bluetooth. Represent the Chuck and WM no matter what. From Gosport to a legend, that's what's up.
Welcome to the newest 2025 edition of Geaux2Legends. I'm so excited about our legend that we have on today. It took a minute because she is so busy that it took us a few months to actually get her locked in for this particular date. And I tell you, we just came through a few snow days, but we're here. But before I introduce our awesome legend, Geaux2Legends is sponsored by T-Mobile. T-Mobile has the fastest network in Louisiana. T-Mobile has the most available 5G network in Louisiana. Geaux2Legends is also sponsored by Ecolite. Introducing Ecolite and EcoSport, the nation's leading manufacturer of LED lighting solutions for commercial and sports lighting applications. We're proud to support Geaux2Legends to help light the way for future legends. Man, when I tell you, my next guest, she really needs no introduction because she is arguably in the top 2 greatest gymnasts ever come out of LSU. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Ashleigh Clare-Kearney Thigpen. Ashleigh, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Ooh, man, you have no idea. I have I was kind of nervous because when I had to go and look at your bio, man, I tell you what, just some of your, I should say all of your accomplishments are pretty fantastic. And I would even say better than pretty fantastic. And before we get into this, I love to give flowers. And a lot of people, I'm sure they can go and they can see all of your accomplishments. But I like to read a few of them just so you get an idea how awesome of a person and gymnast that you are and gymnast that you were. I'll start in, you were the SEC Academic Honor Roll in 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that later on because the role that you're currently in speaks volumes for that. You're the SEC Community Service Team 2008, 2009. 3-time first team All-SEC 2007, 2008, 2009. 2008 Scholastic All-American. 2008 SEC All-Around and Floor Exercise Champion. 2008 SEC Gymnast of the Year. 2008 First Team All-American. And I had to Google UB and FX because even though I love gymnastics, I didn't know what that means. I didn't know what it meant. So uneven bars and floor exercise. 2009 Scholastic All-American. 2009 SEC Floor Exercise Champion. 2009 Gymnastics Honda Sports Award finalist. 2009 Central Region Gymnast of the Year. 2009 Floor Exercise National Champion. 2009 Vault National Champion. 2009 First Team All-American, and 2009 NCAA Women of the Year finalist. And there's more, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But just off the bat, I don't know how often you're reminded of all of your accomplishments or however many times you take a look at them once a year, twice a year. But listening to that list of your accomplishments, how does that make you feel initially?
Grateful, I think, is the first word that comes to mind. I don't think about my accolades a lot. My mom probably reminds me the most. But other than that, I really don't think about it. It's just not something that's on the front of my mind. But I am reminded in the way that people celebrate me and acknowledge me. And I think in the gymnastics community, they often tell me how great of an impact I made, whether it was on their kid because I was coaching, or just from their children watching me in the PMAC. But I think I focus more on the contributions I made that helped build gymnastics and LSU gymnastics to where it is today. And I think that's what gives me the most pride, not necessarily my individual accolades, which I think are great. And I've been rewarded and honored time and time again. So I'm very grateful and thankful for that. But I think it's really cool to have been a part of it and to see where the sport is today. And I think that's probably what brings me the most sense of pride and accomplishment.
Ooh, I'm talking about you set the tone. Oh, you set the tone, especially where our women are today in gymnastics. Here's another record for you. It's an LSU record. So your career individual titles, you have 114. That's a record at LSU all time. 114 I can't even fathom, what that is. I've had fun in my career at LSU. I think about like 6-time All-American at LSU. But 114? Come on, Ashley. That's pretty. Y'all have no idea how much joy it brings me to have Ashley in studio today. Here's a couple more. I told you I wasn't finished, right? So you have or had some career highs in particular exercises. So your highest score in a vault, I believe the highest score you can get is a 10.
That's correct.
You received a 10.
I did.
In bars, a 995. They would probably give me like a 0.013, Ashley, I promise.
I feel like I was very close to a 10. I feel like maybe there were a couple times I earned a 10, but judging in gymnastics is subjective. So
it's subjective. Your beam, you had a 9.975. In floor, you had a 10. All around, 39.825. Y'all, when I tell you, I don't know how difficult or non-difficult our listeners know how hard that is. But you, my lady, were fantastic for LSU gymnastics.
Well, thank you.
So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for setting that tone. So now I'm going to ask you to think way back to childhood. I started playing football and sports. I was about 7 years old. And I can remember in my neighborhood, like me going against guys in my neighborhood that were a little bit bigger, who thought they were a little bit faster. But I stepped out one day and we used to play street football on the concrete. And I remember this at 7 years old. And I just remember outrunning everybody on my street, being able to catch a football at like 7 years old. Take us back to when Ashley really felt the love of sport, and how did it come about?
Yeah, so I started gymnastics when I was 5, which is pretty normal for gymnastics because you peak earlier. You're at your peak truly at a young age just because of the pounding and all of the demand it takes on your body. But so I started at 5, and my mom actually put me in the sport of gymnastics because she wasn't an athlete herself, and she enjoyed watching Mary Lou Retton. Everybody watches gymnastics during the Olympics, right? Like that's when gymnastics has its high, but at least back then. But so she made sure she put me in gymnastics because I was flipping all over the couch. I was doing splits. I was very flexible. I would not stop. So she was like, you need to put this energy somewhere positive. So she and my dad put me in gymnastics, and I fell in love with the sport very early. I'm very competitive. It's just naturally who I am and everything that I do. And I had a little more control in that sport because gymnastics truly is an individual sport. So you have more control over the outcome than you would in a more team-centered sport. And so when I decided I wanted to do something, that's just how I was. And again, still am to that day, no matter what it is. But yeah, we didn't necessarily do all of that outside like a lot of people do with basketball and football because it's dangerous. We could really harm ourselves. But I did do a lot of strength work outside. And so my dad is a very naturally built human being. He played football, he played basketball, he ran track. And I got my figure from him. So I really didn't have to work hard to get definition in my arms and in my legs. So I was like always one of the strongest. And at the time I was actually one of the shortest. And so that boded well for gymnastics, because you have to have strength, and then the smaller you are, the quicker you can be, all of that. So I spent a lot of time conditioning outside of the gym and inside of the gym so that I could perfect the craft and be the best at whatever it is that I was doing. And so there was never really a time. I know that a lot of times people are like, oh, I wanted to quit. There was never a time where I wanted to quit. I think once I was in it, I was just so invested in being great that I did everything in my power to be the best. So it started very early, and that passion continued.
And obviously your mother and father, they supported, you know, your transition into gymnastics. Take us back to, like, if you remember, like, your first, like, gymnastics coach or your first gymnastics gym, and, you know, the things that brought memories and how you actually fell in love even more from that early age, from that first gym or that first coach who had an impact on your life.
Yeah, so early on, I started in classes when I was 5, and it was at a gym in my hometown, and they really were more recreational YMCA type based. And so when they saw what I was capable of doing, they were like, they told my parents, you need to switch gyms. Like, you need to go to somewhere where she can truly be competitive. This is not the place. So I switched gyms, and once I switched gyms, I think I was 6 at the time, so it was not very long. And I was coached by Maureen and Blaine, my coaches, who were my coaches all through high school, all the way through high school. I never switched gyms again. And so I think what set them apart is, I mean, I'm from Connecticut, and so very small state. Gymnastics is not necessarily a hotbed like Texas, for example, but we were the best gym in the state. And so my mom and dad were like, yep, we want her to be a part of that. These coaches seem to really know what they're doing. They had a gym full of successful athletes at that time, and still do to this day. And so I think they obviously made the most impact on me, both as a person and a gymnast. Gymnastics teaches you so much about life. It teaches you the sport, and then the strength obviously is unmatched, but then it's teamwork, and it's because we work together a lot. They did a lot of team building activities. I think I can remember some of my best memories are our travel trips. Back then, your parents didn't necessarily travel with you like they do now.
That freedom life.
Yeah, so it was like free. And like the first time that I went on a roller coaster was with them, and then I was terrified. I can remember I was 7. I was terrified. And so because I was whining a little bit, my coach was like, okay, now you're going in the front. So I went on the front of the roller coaster, which is the scariest seat.
That's right.
But I was just talking to my husband about this the other day, is how I've been parasailing and jet skiing and snowmobiling, and all of that was because of these gymnastics trips, because our coaches wanted to make sure they created that balance for us, where we were here to do a job, and you had the gymnastics aspect, but they also wanted us to have as much fun as possible. And so we went to Las Vegas. I've been to almost every state in the country and out of state a lot because of these travel competitions. So I think that impact, and again, you could do things then that you can't necessarily do now because you have a little bit more freedom, but we were able to connect in a way that really helped build us as human beings. And so it supplemented what our parents were doing at home with us, with our siblings. But gymnastics is a really expensive sport. And I come from, a middle-class family. And so my parents gave everything to gymnastics. My travel, tuition, assessment, it's so expensive. And so we didn't have as many opportunities to travel as a family. We did travel. We went to Florida, we went to Canada to visit family. But my parents wanted to make sure that I was enriched in ways that were unmatched through the sport of gymnastics, because they felt like that was going to largely contribute to the success that I had in the future. Because the vision, obviously at that age, is always Olympics, but the more realistic vision is a college scholarship. And so that was always the goal. But the impact that those two coaches had on me to this day is unmatched. And I think they were very supportive. But they also wanted to create good human beings and contribute to that to the best of their ability, to supplement, again, what the parents were doing at home. And so those memories are unmatched. Again, I still have the relationship with them to this day. I still go back into the gym when I'm at home to connect with them because of the impact that they made, but also the relationship that they had with my parents and the trust that both instilled in one another to ensure they contributed to my success positively.
When you go back into those gyms, do you ever try to get back on the beam or on the floor and try to do some exercises?
You know, I exercise, but I am not getting on the beam. I'm not. I stay on the floor. I can do a back handspring, do a back tuck. I don't want to do too much though, because 2 summers ago, about a year and a half ago, I was doing a box jump and tore my Achilles. So I know my limits now,
Right.
and I have to be realistic about my body. I'm not 20 years old anymore. So, but yes, it is tempting. I'll walk on it, I'll jump, basic things, but I don't go too far.
Man, when I tell you, just probably about a month ago, I was helping some young receivers, and I tried to put some cleats on, strap them on, try to show them how to run a route. I ran one little 5 route, and I felt like a little twinge in my hamstring. I said, "All right, guys, I'm done. I can tell you more than I can show you at this point in my life." So I understand that aspect of it. So we'll keep climbing. So club in high school. Here's some more accolades that I didn't share earlier because I wanted this to be this part of it. But for club and for high school, you were a 5-time Level 10 Connecticut state champion. You won consecutive titles between 2000 and 2004. You won regional titles in 2001, 2003, and 2004. And you competed as an international elite during the 2003 season. You attended Manchester High School in Manchester, Connecticut, and you earned high school honors as a senior, graduating with a 3.50 GPA. So some more accolades. From 7 years old, finding the proper gym for you to get the tools you needed to be successful. Transitioning into high school. Was your high school, I know some like around Louisiana, they recruit. Was your high school a recruiter for gymnastics, or it was the school or a school that offered you the opportunity to do gymnastics? Take us through that high school time and period after the younger age.
Yeah, so Manchester is a very small town, so we have one public high school, one Catholic high school, and then one technical high school. So you really didn't have options unless you could go to the Catholic school and pay tuition, or you go to the public school. And my mom is actually an educator. She still is in the Manchester public schools. And so we were in that school system because of that, and also because she could keep an eye on us. My sisters and I throughout that. So I don't think she was going to give up that flexibility and freedom. In fact, she was in 9th grade. Like, you had the principal of the high school, and then you had a principal of every grade. And so as a freshman, she was the principal of 9th grade for me. And so she was my principal. So it was very interesting. I couldn't do anything, couldn't breathe without her knowing. So that was really the natural option for my sisters and I, for us to be in that school system with her. But so my high school actually didn't have a gymnastics team. They wanted to create one, but never had one. And so that's why I was always in clubs. So I was always in a private club doing gymnastics. They still to this day have not created one, but it's something that they always wanted to do. They did try to recruit me to the diving team and the pole vaulting team at my high school, but I never did that because I was too nervous about getting hurt. But yeah, so it's the club, like there's multiple clubs within the area. My club was not in my town, but it was about 20 minutes from my town. So the process for high school was really strictly about academics. And then the high school worked with me to ensure that I could still go to practice, which was off-site because they didn't have the team at the school itself. And so I practiced actually in the morning before school. And then school got out at 2:10, and I went back to practice after school.
So this is something new for me because I had no idea that, most schools don't have gymnastics teams. I'm sure there's some, but
yeah, there are.
I know mine didn't. Obviously, yours did not. So this brings up a question, like for when recruiting happens, like from high school into the college ranks, how was that process and how did that work with school, or was that not an option, or were you recruited by multiple schools for the gymnastics program?
Yeah, so I was recruited by multiple schools, but it was through my club team. So they had connections. Most collegiate programs, they have their connections with the club coaches, not the high school coaches. Everybody who does club, I don't know of many people, I can't say everybody, but most people who do high school gymnastics are also a part of a club because it's just a very different training regimen and different goals. And the highest level in high school gymnastics is level 8, whereas in club gymnastics it's elite, which is what Simone Biles is for context. So that part wasn't necessarily a challenge for me. There are there's high school championships. There's several high schools here in Louisiana, in Connecticut, that do have the gymnastics, and you do both. But that just wasn't a part of my process. The recruiting process was strictly through my club coaches. And back then, you went on 5 visits and you didn't commit until you were a junior in high school. Now it's not like that anymore. But so I'm going to age myself a little bit, but through my meets, my gymnastics meets, and then practice, we put together a highlight tape, VHS, that we ended up sending to institutions because we didn't have social media and we didn't do any of that. So you had to do it the old-fashioned way. But the college coaches would come to club meets. So you would want to go to specific club competitions where you knew there would be a lot of coaches. They were all at national championships, which is very helpful if you're there. And now they have a lot more options for those that don't make it to the national championship, so that you're still seen by collegiate coaches. But it was that was the model that you followed to go from high school / club to college, is making sure you're getting that exposure in the competitions. And then college coaches would come to your gyms just like they would for any other sport, watch you practice. They do in-home visits back then. I don't know that they do that anymore either, but they would come to your house, you'd go to dinner, and so they got to know you as a person, but then they also were able to watch you practice. And all of that complemented the highlight video, because obviously the highlights are the highlights. And so you want to make sure you see everything. So that was kind of the process that was followed for.
Yeah, so take us through your process, your recruiting, like getting that first letter or that first offer or something like that. So I know when I played, letters came to the house, coaches would call, they would, do all of that recruiting. So it seems like it's pretty similar.
Yep.
Take us through your recruiting process, and then ultimately LSU could have been at the top of the list. LSU could have been a non-factor, and then how you ultimately made that decision that LSU would be your school to attend.
So my first letter I remember I got in 7th grade, and it was from the University of Denver. And that was really exciting because I was like, I guess you always assume you're going to make it, and you can base it on your accolades and what people are telling you, but you really don't know what people are looking for until you actually have it in your hands. And so that was a really cool moment for me, getting those letters. I had to tell my mom that she was committing mail fraud if she kept opening the letters, because I kept getting letters from all these institutions, and she was so excited because she was like, oh great, I'm not gonna have to pay for school. My dad is just so cool, so he just goes with the flow with everything. So my mom was on top of it. But I can recall getting that first letter. It was really exciting. My sisters were so excited for me, and it just felt like the process was very real, even though I was only in 7th grade. So I was still very young. College seemed like light years away, but obviously that time flies by. And so then letters started coming regularly. And so it got to a point where I was like, wow, I'm really going to have my pick of the litter, really. I'm going to have any option, anywhere I want to go, anywhere I want to be. I'm going to be able to do that because it seems like people are seeing the value in me and seeing what I can bring to their institution. And so that process, it was hard in that it was probably the most difficult time or most challenging thing I encountered at that time, because having those conversations, I think a lot of times, and I appreciate it now, but back then my mom and dad made us call the colleges and have the conversations ourselves, no matter how old we were. And so as that process was getting closer to where I had to narrow down to my 5 official visits that I was going to take, I had so many institutions still that were trying to get me to come to their campus. And so I just wanted my mom or dad to call them and tell them I'm not interested. And my parents were not having it. And so, again, now I appreciate it because I can have conversations with anyone. But at the time, I was like, I'm only 12. I'm only 13. Like, why are you making me have these hard conversations? But I think it really did prepare me it was the first step in preparing me to be on my own. And I think you see the vision. Sometimes you don't understand why your parents are doing the things that they do, but you definitely see the vision, especially once you become a parent. But yeah, so that process was really exciting, a lot of highs, some lows, because again, I didn't want to tell schools that I didn't want to be there because I felt like they had taken the time to get to know me and cared about me as a person and cared about me as a gymnast. And I hated to be the one to tell them no, but my parents just kept saying, you know how many times they're told no? Like, you're not going to be the first. You're not the first. You're not going to be the last. So you need to just have the conversation, and they'll appreciate it coming from you and not from us, all of that. So that was probably the hardest part. But I think once it came down to when I wanted to decide what 5 places I'd visit, one part of me wanted to be in the SEC just because this is the premier conference for gymnastics and for most sports. But the other part of me, I'm a homebody. I'm very big on family, and being away from my family, the thought of that was like very intimidating. And then being from Connecticut, which is a very different state than Louisiana in so many ways.
So many.
So there were just a lot of things to consider when it came to, do I want to stay up north? Because there were options up north, Penn State and, the University of New Hampshire. I can remember those being 2 that stood out, that were close in proximity. Michigan State. It's not necessarily close, but it's closer. So, and my dream school growing up was Michigan. And the only reason was because of the colors. I don't know why, because today I'm like, oh, the colors are all right. But that was like my dream school. I had Michigan gear. And so it was really interesting. And so how I got to a place where LSU became one of my options, my younger sister had AAU Nationals for basketball in New Orleans one year. And so we all came. And we were playing, and they were going to go to the aquarium, and my parents were like, well, why don't we just go by LSU? And at this point, LSU, I don't know that I'd even heard from LSU. They weren't even one of the institutions that I was talking to. And I was like, Mom, I don't think I'm going to Louisiana. Like, I'm not going to live here. This is crazy, right? It's so different. It wasn't even on my radar. They were always good, always in the top 10. It just wasn't, I don't know why. But for whatever reason, it wasn't a highlight for me. It wasn't at the top of my list. Hadn't heard from him, and so it seemed like the feeling was mutual. Anyway, so my parents were like, no, we're going to go. Let's just see. So we drove to Baton Rouge. We had never spoken to the coach, nothing. We had no appointment. We just showed up on campus. And they guided us to the athletic administration building, and we walked in, and it just so happened that Dee Dee and the other 2 coaches, Bob and Phil, were in their offices at that time, and they knew exactly who I was. They were like, we haven't sent anything yet because we haven't sent it for that class yet. So you haven't received anything from us. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say to this day.
If it was Dee Dee, I believe that if it was Dee Dee. That's my girl.
So they gave us a tour. She dropped everything she was doing. She gave us a tour around the administration building, around the gymnastics facility, around campus. I mean, they treated us like royalty, truly. And so I left, and I was like, wow, maybe that is somewhere that I should consider. It's not something that was on my radar at all, but it's something that I should consider. And so I went back home. We got to reevaluate everything. And so when it came down to it, I chose LSU as one of the 5 places I was going to visit. And when I came here to actually engage in the official visit process, it was like a no-brainer for me. And this was my third or fourth visit. I think I had Missouri after that. I went to Oklahoma before that, Michigan State before that. I mean, so I was all over the place. Nothing West Coast because I knew that was going to be too far for me.
Right.
So Oklahoma was the furthest, but my mom was actually very pro-Oklahoma. She was like, don't do it. And she told this story at my wedding, actually, because my husband's from Baton Rouge, but she was like, we are not I don't think Louisiana is it. Ashley, you need to go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is it. And I follow my parents' advice for everything. Like to this day, I ask my husband and then I ask my parents, whatever decision I'm going to make. So to not follow what my mom said was pretty rare for me. My dad, again, was just like, whatever you think, whatever your heart's telling you. And my gut was telling me I needed to be at LSU. Just because I felt a sense of family and a sense of comfort in a way that I did not realize was possible. And so that sense of family was why I ended up here at LSU, and here I am still living in Baton Rouge, never left, and now I've officially lived in Baton Rouge for longer than I lived in Connecticut. But yeah, so it was just a feeling that I had, and I know a lot of people say that, but it's really true, and I believe in fate. I believe that all of that happened for a reason, and so I think had we never made that trip to Baton Rouge, I don't know that it would have ended this way. And so it really is incredible to have that story and to be able to share that. Dee Dee loves it. Dee Dee loves that she was a part of that in a way that was very unique.
That's right.
And we still, again, talk about it to this day. So I think I was really supposed to be in Baton Rouge and here at LSU, and it was just a feeling that this community gave me.
Well, I think you were destined for it, and you probably never have thought about it this way. With Louisiana being like one of the seafood capital places in the world, your father gave you a nickname when you were a young lady, a little girl. He called you Shrimp, right?
Yeah, still.
Yeah, and still to this day. And for whatever reason, he named you that. You know, you were destined for it even before you knew it. I don't even know you ever thought about it like that.
I have not thought about it like that. You're right, though.
Yeah, so that's it right there. Your dad, he already put it in you, and you had no idea.
Manifested it.
He manifested it, absolutely. So you get to campus. You make the decision. Or better yet, were you sitting with your parents? Were you in your room and you said, LSU is the place I'm going to go? And what conversations did you have with your parents to let them know? Because your mother, she was Oklahoma. So you eventually, and I think back like when you were going through recruiting and some of the schools you had to say no to, this is a time that you had to say no to your mother because you made the choice to come to LSU. Tell us about that conversation and how it went.
Well, my mother is she's an alpha female, if you will. So she's very direct, she's very stern, she knows what she wants, she's very vocal about it. And as I said, my dad is the opposite. Very quiet, only speaks when he really has something to say, but like really intelligent. So I think they balance each other really well. And my dad just kept saying, Ashley, you have to do what you believe is best. And if your gut and your heart is telling you to go to LSU, then that's what you need to do, regardless of what your mom says. And he said it in front of my mom, right? And my mom would be like, Craig, you're wrong. I don't know why you're telling her that. Like, that's not right. So it was definitely a battle between the two of them. But ultimately, my mom was very vocal about us standing up for what we believe in, whether it's gymnastics or not, like who we are as people. Whenever we see something, to always say something, to always educate people, to always impact people when we can. And so she taught us that from such a young age. And so she had to remember that and say, like, listen, I'm going to give you everything that I can. I'm telling you you're making a mistake, but I also have taught you to use your voice and stand up for what you believe in. And you also you rarely go against me. So you must be very convicted in this decision, right? And so I'm going to respect that, even though I think you're making a mistake. And so she reminded me that I was making a mistake constantly, but she respected what she instilled in us and what my parents truly lived by. And so for me to be able to be that vocal and to stand up to it and not be swayed, I think was telling for her. And so that allowed her to back down a little bit and be comfortable. And now that didn't stop her when we moved down here from having very real, authentic conversations with Dee Dee about the things that she feared, just being in the South, and especially when you're from a very progressive state like Connecticut and you come down, you have perceptions of what the South will be like when you've never lived here, and just from what you see and what you've heard. And so we had very real conversations. My mom, in the school system, she does equity work. And so it's just something that's been a part of the conversation for so long. And so That was something that I think contributed to the fear that she had with me coming to LSU, or why she felt like this wasn't the place. But I think a lot of that was calmed and settled when she had a conversation with Dee Dee, and she got to know her and who Dee Dee is as a person, and just that Dee Dee cared about her student athletes beyond the sport. She really wants them to be successful in whatever it is that they choose to do, and she wants to help get them there. And so I think that whole mentality allowed my mom to settle in a little bit. And then, like I said, my dad was fine with it. My sisters were like, oh, we can go to Mardi Gras, so they were worried about different things, right? But so I think that process was hard because I was going against my mom. And I remember feeling like conflicted, like, am I making the wrong decision? But I think having that reassurance from my dad, and then my mom also backing down, eventually let me know that it's okay to feel what I'm feeling, and this is the first step in me being on my own and making decisions, and my parents aren't going to always be there for every single decision that I make, and I have to trust, the values that they instilled in me, who I am as a person, and make sure I follow my heart and remain true to that. And so,
wow. Parenting 101.
Absolutely, right?
Living what she's teaching, right? And having the motherly wherewithal to say, okay, this is what I've instilled. So I have to look at what I've instilled and take that in and let my baby girl make her decision. So applaud to mom and dad, right? Because both of them are great parents from what I'm understanding and hearing. So we get through that process, and you finally make it to LSU. Your first day on campus, like being away from mom, you have to move into the dorm room. I'm not sure. I lived in Broussard. It was right next to Graham. I know Broussard is still there, but we had to get moved in. Tell us about, like, if you remember your first day coming to campus, meeting your maybe roommate, and then going to practice. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I lived in WCA. It was
WCA.
the first or second year that it was open, so it was brand new. And now, student athletes are like, you lived there? Like, yeah, I did, and it was really nice. We had our own bedroom and a bathroom and washer and dryer inside there. So, it was my parents and my sisters came down with me. And I remember at that time you could have like an unlimited amount of suitcases on the airplane without paying for it. So we had like tons of suitcases for me to move in, and they were here for like 2 weeks. And I remember when they left, I broke down. Like I just lost it. Because I'd never been away, right? I'm living so far away, and it's not they don't live in Houston where I can just get in my car and drive. I didn't even have a car actually at that time. My parents didn't let me bring it my freshman year. So yeah, that was a really hard time, and I think what got me through is just having that family in my team.
Right.
And I lived with my teammates. There was 4 of us, and we had the 4-bedroom. We had the kitchen, the living room, and we had everything that we needed in there. And so I was set up, but it still just felt like there was a void, and I still feel that void to this day. Like being away from my family is so challenging. And when I leave Connecticut, we go in the summer, and for Christmas every year when I leave, I cry every time to this day. And when they come and visit, which they come a lot, so I see my family almost every month, someone, and when they leave, I cry. So I think that has just always been who I am. And again, it's because I'm so close to my family, and I think family is so important. It's one of my core values. And so I think that was really hard for me. But I think that my teammates, and just as a student athlete, your days are so packed.
That's right.
You don't have time to sulk. So I think that was probably the best thing for me. And like I said, when they left that day, they left the day before school started. So I had that day to like wallow in self-pity. And then, but I had to get it together. And I can recall the first day of school, I was a business major. And so I had classes in then CEBA, now Patrick Taylor. And I had no idea where I was going. We did this, the upperclassmen took us, they drove us around campus to find our class. But once I had to walk myself, I got lost. Campus was so big to me at the time, and now it's so small. But at the time, it was enormous, and I could not find my way. And so I ended up way on, like, outside the gates of campus. And I was like, this can't be right. And so I was late for class the first time. because I passed up SEBA. I can recall that, and I was like, oh gosh, hopefully this isn't an indication of how the semester is going to go. But we had all of that. We had study hall. We had all the things, and so LSU really sets you up to be successful, really, to where you can't make mistakes, and if you do, they help pick you up. And so navigating that as an 18-year-old is very helpful. I think being a student athlete certainly helps with that. And so practice was at that time we were in the voluntary, if you will, phase of practice, because our preseason starts in September for gymnastics. And so we were in the gym just trying to get our feet wet, get used to the equipment, because that's a big thing in gymnastics, is getting used to the floor, getting used to the bar. It's just so different from high school. And so the equipment's the same, but the different brands feel different, all of that. So it was really an adjustment period, but it was positive because I had so many people. I had such an incredible village around me, whether it was fans, the coaching staff, my teammates. We had so many opportunities to meet other student athletes. We lived in the dorms with only student athletes. And so I think all of that really contributed to me having a positive experience coming in as an 18-year-old, so far away from home, not knowing what to expect.
That's awesome. I know, I'm constantly reminded of one play in particular that happened for me here in Baton Rouge in Tiger Stadium. There was a punt return that went over my head. I picked it up on a 2-yard line, got knocked back like 6 yards into the end zone. I come out and I run that thing back 106 yards for a touchdown. Technically, it's only 100, but I say it's 106, right? In your career at LSU, is there one instance and I gave all of your accolades at the beginning. Is there one instance anywhere that you're constantly reminded of, or one in particular, whether it's on the floor or out of the gym, that really stands out, that made an impact on who Ashleigh is today?
Yeah, I would say the one that stands out to me the most is making it to Super 6 for the first time. Dee was the coach at LSU for 44 years. I don't remember what year she was in. I could do the math, but I'm not good at math. What year she was in during that season, which was the 2008 season, but I know that LSU had a history of being successful, always made it to nationals, always was in the top 10, and never made it to Super 6. And Super 6, for those that don't know, is equivalent to the Final Four, or it's the national championship.
Got it.
So most of the time when you have a basketball, football, you have 2 teams in the national championship. For gymnastics, it's 6 teams. Now it's 4. They've modified it. But at the time, it was 6 teams. And so that final meet of the season where you compete for the national championship is the meet that Dee never made it to. She always got so close and never made it. And so to be on that team in 2008 that made it for the first time in LSU history, by far was probably the most impactful memory for me. I remember the newspaper article. I remember everyone that was on the team. I can picture the arena we were in when they told us that we made it for the first time in school history. And that, to me, with those girls, is something that nobody can take away from us. But also, I think it was the turning point, or it got us over the hump. And so then, since then, LSU Gymnastics has continued to grow and build and evolve to the point where now, last year, they won the national championship for the first time in school history. And so, and that's something they kept saying last year, is the team that, the best team to never win, the best team to never do it, is what they kept calling LSU for years. And so they finally did it last year. And so I think that truly set the tone for the last decade of LSU gymnastics, is getting past that, because I know for Dee it probably felt like, why is this not happening? Like, what am I doing wrong? I keep falling short. And even my freshman year, we were ranked number 1 in the country, and we didn't make it. And we were supposed to make it that year. And so to be on that team, where I don't know that people really felt like that was the team that was going to do it, I think stands out for me as a core memory, and probably the top, the most impactful moment in my career, just because I was last up, I remember, and so we needed me to hit to be able to make it, and so we were on beam. So, yeah, I think that's the one that stands out the most, just because of all the moving pieces, and it finally came together.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. Side note, just so you know, I'm the guy that when I'm pumping gas, I never round up to the nearest dollar. When the pump clicks,
It's over.
I stay there.
Yeah, no.
And I know that I know that's a pet peeve of yours that you round up.
You have to round up, and I will keep clicking until it's an
even number, or will that rounded up number?
It could be not even even. It has to be 0 or 5. Like it has to end in a 0 or 5. To this day, cannot stand it. It seems like so chaotic. Like you don't have your life together.
Right.
If you just stop, like I don't know. And I also want to maximize. I also like shake it for a while, make sure I get all of it in there. Gas is expensive. You know?
You never know when the Mississippi River Bridge will be backed up. You're going to need that little shake.
You need that little shake.
So, all right. So after Super 6, right, you made it Super 6. You graduate LSU. Post LSU, what did Ashley do? Was there any Olympic trials? Were there other meets or anything that Ashley did after graduating LSU?
No. So there was a brief period of time where I was like, oh, this would be cool if I could compete for Jamaica. My mom's side of the family is from Jamaica. And so my mom has dual citizenship, obviously. And so I wanted to compete for Jamaica for a brief period of time. And then I was like, I think my body's done, right? So I had a very, for the most part, injury-free career. I didn't have any knee, back, Achilles. Those are the 3 that I always tried to avoid.
Right.
Didn't have any of that. I did have a broken foot, sprained ankles, which what athlete doesn't? And then I had some wrist issues. I ended up having wrist surgery after my senior year. And so once I had that wrist surgery, that kind of solidified it because your range of motion is lost. So there was a brief period of time where I was like, yeah, I would love to try to compete at the international level again and see if I could compete at Worlds for Jamaica. But ultimately I decided I wanted to finish grad school and go to law school. Everyone told me that I'm really good at arguing and I'm not afraid to be vocal, which is what my parents taught me, right? And so I think, and I just felt like going to law school would make me so marketable regardless of what I wanted to do. And at that time, I wanted to be a sports agent. So gymnastics was I hung it up, but I still wanted to be involved in sports somehow, in that sport particularly. So while I was in law school, I served as the volunteer coach, but there was 1 year from when I finished, there was 1 year after where I just did the Go Zone, I think is what it was called. So it was radio broadcast, which this was back when gymnastics was on tape delay, and so you didn't watch it live on TV, so we had to have the Go Zone so that people could listen to the meet when we were away. So I was the radio commentator for away meets for that 1 year, and then I became the volunteer coach and did that for 11 years. So it was a way for me to, start my career or start on the path to my career by going to law school, but also keeping gymnastics in my life because I felt like gymnastics gave me so much, and so I wanted to be able to impact those who came after me specifically in that sport and specifically at LSU.
Right.
So, yeah, so it turned into my love for gymnastics never faded, obviously, to this day. Love the sport, but my body said it was time, and you got to listen to your body, right?
Oh, mother, age and gravity. She's undefeated. I
Undefeated.
promise, undefeated. So you graduate, you get your degree in law, and there's some other jobs that you did, but ultimately, LSU asked you to come back. And currently, you're the Associate Athletic Director and Strategic Advancement. Tell us how LSU brought you back and the impact, because I know the work that you're doing. I've been in your office a few times. We've shared some stories. I've even been up to, get some things signed and all that fun stuff. So the decision to come back to LSU and the impact that you're making on campus right now.
Yeah, I think, this being in this position allowed me to bring all my passions together in one place. As I shared previously, I went to law school to be a sports agent. That didn't end up happening for a lot of reasons. One, I have friends that are in professional leagues, and they were like, I don't think it's not what you think it is. So you're very vocal, you're very analytical, you're going to be very strategic in why you want to make a decision. And when the athlete doesn't want to do that, you're going to be frustrated. So I just don't think it's for you. So, and being in Baton Rouge is probably not a hotbed for being a sports agent. But, but like I said, I was in the legal world, and then I was the volunteer coach. And so those were two very separate worlds. And so when Stephanie Remp, at the time she was the COO with the athletic department, she had a vision, and it was to merge those worlds for me. The department didn't have an attorney, and obviously the attorneys for the institution are in the general counsel's office, but to have a mind of an attorney in the athletic department that could weigh in on some of the legal aspects of being in athletics, I think was very advantageous to her. Being a former athlete here with a passion for LSU and a passion for the athletic department and being a part of the growth, I think was something that she knew would be appealing to me. And then it was right after 2020, so we were right off of COVID and George Floyd, and so we had this awakening as a country, and so people started to focus their efforts on making sure we're creating a space that people can be proud of, and where people can bring their authentic self to that space every single day. And so with those things in mind, Stephanie created the position, which has now transformed a little bit. So I originally came in as the Associate AD for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And so, but we have evolved, I guess you can say,
right,
as a country since then. And so, as has my position. And so but it's still allowed me to merge my legal world, my passion for sports into one position, and to be able to impact student athletes I was in their position not too long ago. I like to say pretty soon it's going to be a while ago.
That's my position, a while ago.
But I think it's really cool. I care a lot about people. I care a lot about how they feel. And I think it's important for people to be able to walk into any space and be who they are and be proud of that, and not feel like there is any fear or negativity or dangers associated with them being themselves. And I think that is something that I'm passionate about, not only because of the way I was raised, but also being from Connecticut and being in a sport where most of the individuals that I was with every day did not look like me. It was important for me to feel safe in that space. And so I want to make sure I'm contributing in a positive way to creating a space where other people can feel that way as well, regardless of who you are, where you came from. But I think it's important for people to recognize and acknowledge the experiences of different student athletes and how that impacts what it is that they do and the decisions they make, because those experiences largely inform the decisions that they make. And so we have to be aware of that. And so to be able to make that impact on student athletes, but also with the staff, because I am staff facing primarily, is really important. But I also think it's important for our staff, no matter their position. We had some staff that, felt like, not that their position didn't matter, but that they weren't necessarily seen. And so I make it a point to know their names and speak to them and ask them about their families and things that they're passionate about whenever we have dialogue. And so I think that's the caring about people part, and that creates a space where people feel like, I really want to be here.
Right.
Because these people care about me beyond the work that I do. They care about me as a person. And so to be able to do that is really important to me, to impact the student athletes, which is obviously the reason why we all have jobs in an athletic department, but also to be able to use that analytical part of my brain that I was trained on. And so being able to look at some assistant coaches' contracts and create some policies and procedures that we didn't have before, and think about our public records requests, because you're analyzing the law and making sure we're doing everything in line with that. So I think doing all of that, my job is I touch a lot of different areas. I do a lot of different things, but being able to pull it all together, I think, is incredible. And so for me, it was a no-brainer once the opportunity presented itself. Once I got an understanding of everything that I'd be doing and the impact that I could make, because that is truly what matters. That is why I get up in the morning, to be able to impact our student athletes, but also to try to create an environment and a world where my children will feel the same way I'm hoping I make people feel. So I want to be able to impact as many people as possible so that as the children are coming up in the future, right, they will feel the same way no matter the space they're in and no matter what challenges they may face, because we all have them.
Yeah, man, so powerful. I know a lot of times when people are doing interviews and they hear a story like that and your passion and the impact that you have in a particular workspace, they say, okay, yeah, that's great. I say, yes, that is phenomenal for a couple reasons. One, because I know who Ashleigh Clare-Kearney Thigpen is. And two, I see the work that you do because I work in the building with you. I work in athletics with you. So I see all of the emails and I see the work that you do. And I know that it has a tremendous impact on our student athletes and the staff that's in that building. So thank you for being that voice. Thank you for being that passion that drives what it is and everything that people are looking for in that particular field. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. Last thing.
Yeah.
You're married with 3 kids. Tell us about your family.
So I married a Baton Rouge man through and through. And it was funny because when we first met, he was like, gymnastics? That's what I have to be involved in? Like, that is not at all what he was raised watching. So he went to Capitol High School here in Baton Rouge. He was a quarterback, and then he played quarterback at Morehouse in Atlanta, and then came back. And so he owns his own construction company now, which is really cool, just because he was a teacher when I met him and coaching high school football. And again, he was somebody who loved to make an impact on those young men, and that's why he coached, that's why he taught. So to see him now, though, be focused on himself is really exciting for me. And he still has relationships with his former athletes, talks to them all the time, certainly served as a father figure for those that he was a part of, those whose lives he was a part of, and still is. But I'm excited that he now gets to focus on our kids a little bit more and also be building his own business for the future. And so he enjoys that. And then I have 3 boys. One is 11. They're 11, 4, and 2. So it is chaos in my house at all times. And my husband's actually home with the 2 and 4-year-old right now. The 11-year-old has basketball, so he's doing all that. The snow doesn't stop sports, right?
That's right.
So he has a game tonight. So, but my 2, 4, and 11-year-old boys are they're our world, and so everything that I do is for them. I told you I'm big on family. Obviously, I still talk to my family that I didn't create, the one I was a part of, every day. They're all in Connecticut, but I talk to them every day, every single one of them. We have technology is a beautiful thing because now my kids can call them on the portal. We have a Facebook portal, and it's a machine that follows them around, so I don't have to hold the FaceTime to let the grandparents see them. But yeah, so my oldest is heavily involved in sports, football, basketball at the lab school, loving it. And then my 2 and 4-year-old obviously are in daycare still, preschool, but they think they're 11 sometimes, and so they try to keep up with the 11-year-old who I think has the patience of a saint to deal with the 2 of them who follow him everywhere he goes. Right. But yeah, so it's a very exciting time in my life. We have, again, chaos, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Everyone tells us that enjoy it because you're going to want it back. So we try to enjoy it. We just got back from Disney. We try to do as many things as possible. Didn't realize how expensive Disney is. We probably shouldn't have done Christmas then Disney. But again, I think it just brings me joy to know that those individuals that I'm in a household with are happy. Yeah. And that's why I do what I do, is to try to make a future for them, but also continue to focus on my marriage with my husband to ensure we create a space where our kids know they can be successful and they can do anything they want to do. And it's scary, right? Being a parent, like, because you want to make sure you're telling them all the right things and you have this finite period to give them all the lessons, and then you hope it translates once they leave. And so as DJ, the oldest, is getting closer to, I mean, again, he's 11, so we got a little time, but I'm like, we're running out of years. We got to make sure we cram everything in. And so, but they're really good kids. Love it. Wouldn't trade my life for the world.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, social media, for all of our listeners and watchers who will tune in, if they want to follow Ashleigh Clare-Kearney Thigpen, what's your social media, if you have any social media?
Yeah, I do. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I don't even know what my TikTok handle is, but yeah.
I don't know my TikTok either.
I think I really have it to watch videos. I don't really have it to post videos.
Got it.
I said I'm going to build my social media. I'm trying to build my following a little bit because like these influencers are making money off of this, right? So I'm like, I have a story I could tell. I've got entertaining children.
That's right.
That could certainly
That's right.
entertain people or influence them, if you will. But on Facebook, it's my whole name, all four of them. And then on Instagram, it's my maiden name, so it's A. Clare-Kearney. That's it. That's the whole handle. So
there you go.
You can find me there.
Wow. Not only are you a guest of Geaux2Legends today, because it's bigger than that, you were a phenomenal athlete throughout your entire career and through LSU. You are a phenomenal woman in power who's leading a lot of younger athletes on campus today, along with staff. You are a phenomenal wife and mother and daughter. I applaud you for being all of those powerful things, and in particularly a black woman empowering other athletes. Doesn't matter, black, white, Asian, it don't matter. You are empowering our people here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So thank you for being our guest here on Geaux2Legends. And Geaux2Legends is sponsored by T-Mobile. T-Mobile has the fastest network in Louisiana. T-Mobile has the most available 5G network in Louisiana. And T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most awarded 5G network. And we're also sponsored by EcoLight and EcoSport, introducing EcoLight and EcoSport, the nation's leading manufacturer in LED lighting solutions and commercial and sports lighting applications. We're proud to support Geaux2Legends to help light the way for future legends. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashleigh Clare-Kearney Thigpen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this, right? Like bringing attention to so many different athletes and what it is that they did, but also what it is that they're doing now. And you, obviously, a legend in your own right, certainly have the platform to do it. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I love it. Until next time, everybody, peace and love. We'll see you next time.
Geaux2Legends fans, we ask that you subscribe, like, share, tell everybody who's an LSU fan, your uncle, your mom, your dad, your cousin, sister, everybody. Share this with them, have them do the same, and I promise you, y'all won't regret being a part of the Geaux2Legends podcast.
The struggle, the hustle, the blood, the sweat, the tears from the L's you took, don't forget. Survival of the fittest, the cheers, the rings and bucks, now legendary status, that's what's up. The struggle, the hustle, the blood, the sweat, the tears from the L's you took, don't forget. Survival of the fittest, the cheers, the rings and bucks, now legendary status, that's what's up.